Today, I want to talk about how you can recognize the LO's discounting from the rate sheet. What we've done, as we've talked about before, is we've converted a P&L to an 8-key performance indicator. And this is the old way here on the left, which is just, 3-4 pages of a P&L. And ultimately, sometimes it's detached from the production report. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes they're included. But ultimately, if you're trying to find, if I'm looking at 4 P&Ls here, it's going to be almost impossible to find LO's discounting. Now, our way, which I'm going to expand on this in a minute, we'll talk specifically about how you could recognize this. It reminds me of the old days when you're sitting in the dentist's office and talking about, I think the book was, the magazine was called Highlighter, and you'd have 2 pictures, one right next to each other, and can you find the difference? The guy had a hat on the right and he didn't have it on the left, and you'd have to find out which one was the difference. Well, in our situation, I think we've made it really easy for you to be able to look at this. Now, as we go deeper on these 8 key performance indicators, I've blurred out these sections here so we can just focus on this one column and the amount of volume that these people had, that these branches had. Now, this was a column that I added. I originally only had 7 key performance indicators, and I added this 8th one for our old school loan officers, which is where I came from, old school branch managers, where then you could see, you used to pay LO comp rules, changed this a few years back, but ultimately used to be able to pay a loan officer based upon the percentage of revenue that they brought in. So if you agreed to pay them 50%, they brought in 300 basis points, you pay them 150. Well, now let's look at this. Let's examine this. I'm looking at 4 different branches here. And let's just look across the line. We don't know whether these made money or didn't make money. D101 had 38% of their revenue was paid out in LO comp. D102 had 40% paid out in LO comp. D103 had 68% paid out in LO comp. And D104 had 35% paid out in LO comp. Well, what this means is that 68% of the revenue that came in on the front end was now paid to the loan officer. Well, let's just see. I'm going to look at this next slide. And let's just see how these compare and how we look at these together. Well, you can see here as we fill in the blanks, you can see here right across the board, the D103, they had 206 basis points coming in at the top, which was the lowest of the 4. We're not talking about the bottom business blood pressure number here, but they had 109 basis points in CPI. And basically that's the number, that's the amount of money that they have to pay, that they have left over to pay a loan officer and for profit. Well, in this example, we're paying the loan officer out 141 basis points. The first indicator for me is when this number is way high. You can see these 35, 40, 38, they're in the vicinity. I'm okay if it's like 50 and below. At 68%, what that tells me is you probably didn't set up your comp plan with a rate sheet that said, I'm going to pay out the loan officer 141 basis points. And it's okay for them to bring in 206. Not the case. In this particular example, because they paid out 68% in LO comp, ultimately they lost 32 basis points, which lost $13,661. And when you compare this to the others, this branch made $54,000, this branch made $35,000, this branch made $18,000. This branch lost $13,000. Now, is 141 basis points too much to pay for comp? It's your call. I don't know your market. I don't know your situation, but ultimately you cannot pay out 141 basis points at 206 basis points in revenue. This is my first indication. When I see this number as high as it is, the 68%, when I see it as high as it is, it's my first indication that loan officers are discounting the rate sheet.